You know, it says something when you have both teams that are from Baltimore struggling the way that the Orioles did and now the Ravens are. And you have to wonder, what is it? Is it coaching? Off-season decisions? Or is it a combination of everything? Also, how much are the players really to blame for this? Well, I'm gonna try to break this down because I think I have an idea of what was going on with the off-season decisions and everything else. And really, at this point, I think all of us can come to the same conclusion when it comes to both teams. But how did it get to this? Exactly how? With the Baltimore Orioles, they won 100 games in 2023. In 2024, they were back in the playoffs, and now they have the fourth best odds to get the number one overall pick. Meanwhile, for the Ravens, they go to the championship game in 23. 24, they just lose in the divisional round because of a drop pass on a two-point conversion. And now they look to be in their worst season in franchise history with no clear idea as to what's going to happen in the future. Let's break this down. And we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm not going to do a lot of editing here. This is going to be like a true reaction to this and true kind of theory because I don't know what's going on in those team meetings. I'm not an insider or anything like that. I'm just a guy that tries to pay attention to what exactly is happening. So I would take this with a grain of salt, but I might bring up some good points here. I don't know. It's just something I want to do because it just shouldn't have happened. It just shouldn't have happened to where both of them struggle the way they do. Meanwhile, for the Ravens, I'm going to say this. Their anniversary seasons are cursed. I mean, their first season is clearly the worst in franchise history. They go 4-12. Defense was awful that first year. Then in 2005, their 10th-year anniversary, they go 6-10 when they were expected to compete for a playoff spot, and the team just fell completely apart. Kyle Bowler showed that he was not a franchise quarterback. And then 2015, people kept getting hurt. Joe Flacco got hurt for the first time in his career. They finished 5-11. That's just something kind of nuts. And I think that's got to be studied. How is it that as soon as the Ravens hit an anniversary season, this happens? It's unbelievable. It's kind of nuts. And maybe it's a sign that they shouldn't celebrate their anniversary seasons. Maybe that's the sign right there. Maybe for the 40th anniversary, don't say anything. Just act like it's a regular season, and maybe you'll be fine. But there are lingering issues, and part of it is just them kind of holding still when it comes to certain aspects of the roster. And yeah, they bring in guys like DeAndre Hopkins, you bring in Jair Alexander, and you draft Malachi Starks. But there were issues last year when it came to certain aspects of the team, especially with the guard positions, because the guards were not great, and it's even worse this year. I mean, Daniel Falele is just not a starting guard in this league. He's a good backup to have. I think that's a guy you want as your top backup for multiple offensive line positions, but just not a guy that can be a starter full-time in this league. I just don't see it from him. I didn't see it from him last year, and I'm not seeing it from him this year. And he's playing not great football, and yet it doesn't seem like the Ravens really care. It's like they want to put the blame somewhere else. And I don't like that. I really don't. And on the defensive side, the front seven, I mean, Roquan Smith is just, I don't know what the heck happened to him. He turns into the best inside linebacker in 2023. 2024, he struggles, and now, not only is he hurt, but he wasn't playing well to begin with. It's not good because Smith, he's got all this talent. We know how good he is, and yet he's a shell of his former self? How does that happen? That shouldn't be happening. And again, I just don't know how stuff like this can happen, but maybe it's the fact that the coaches could be the issue. Now, we've complained a lot about John Harbaugh. By we, I mean Ravens fans. Okay? I've had my complaints about him too, but I didn't think it would get to this point. And I think now we have to have the discussion of maybe the game has finally passed John Harbaugh. I mean, he's been the Ravens head coach since 2008, and it happens to everybody. It happened to Tom Landry. He coached the Cowboys for 29 years. And it happened to him. So if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody. It happened to Bill Belichick. Okay? That's just what happens. The game changes, and not everybody can keep up with change. Some coaches are lucky to get out when they do. Okay? Bill Walsh got out after he won his third Super Bowl. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it even happened to Mike Shanahan. And Mike Shanahan built the Broncos into back-to-back Super Bowl champions. So I think it is time to have that discussion with John Harbaugh. But it's not just him at this point. I mean, Todd Monken's got issues as well, but I think they're fine with him as the offensive coordinator. But Zach Orr just isn't ready to be a defensive coordinator. I think part of the issue with the defense is just they're playing guys out of position at this point, especially along the front seven. I mean, why do we see guys like Mike Green, Odafe Owe, and even Robinson, your best pass rushers, dropping into coverage in obvious passing down situations? That doesn't make any sense at all. And it's part of the reason as to why the Ravens only have 4 sacks on the year. Through 4 games, they've only sacked the quarterback 4 times. For a team that prides itself on its defense, that's not the way to go. At all. Really not. And I don't like that. Because as somebody that has grown up with this team, literally, they came to Baltimore in 1996. I was born in 1996. I was born the day before their first game. Okay? So I think I know a thing or two about the history of this team. They've always prided themselves on defense, and it's just not good. And then to see Harbaugh call out Monken when the offense, for the most part, has been playing well throughout the early part of the season, when the defense is the one struggling, and really the only time we didn't see them struggle was against the Browns, and we know how not good the Browns' offense is. That just doesn't make sense, and kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. And I think it just goes back to, has the game passed by Harbaugh? And it's a discussion to have. And I think we should be having that discussion at this point. I mean, the game passes by people, and we see it from some of the decisions that he made, not just what's going on this year, but look at a few years back in the championship game against Kansas City. They don't run the ball. They gave their running back 6 carries the entire game, and he's talking about how they had a great game plan to stop the run. The only problem is they didn't even try. Gus Edwards gets 3 carries. So did Justice Hill. And Gus Edwards had a 15-yard run and did not touch the ball again for the entire first half after that. So this is definitely the time to have the discussion of whether or not John Harbaugh should be leading this team. And personally, I think it's time that he steps aside. I think it's time the Ravens start looking for a new head coach. And the whole thing with Zach Orr, I just don't think he's ready to be a defensive coordinator. I think they brought him up too soon. Not to mention, losing the guys that they did at the same time as Mike McDonald, that didn't help either. I mean, it wasn't just him. It was also guys like Anthony Weaver and a few other defensive coaches that were really good at their jobs. They lose those guys, and I don't think they really replaced them at all. So I think there's your issue right there. I think the coaching staff just hasn't been great. And then just not taking the front line seriously on both the offensive and defensive side. And now you have guys hurt on both sides. Ronnie Stanley is hurt. We don't know when he's going to play again this year. And we don't know if Metabuke is ever going to play again. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name. I couldn't think of it. But Nnamdi Metabuke could be done for the rest of his career. We don't know, because all we know is that he's out for the season with a neck injury, and we know how serious those can be. Then you have Broderick Washington, who's out for the next 4 games, and it's just not what you want to see right now with the defensive line. And again, with the linebackers, Roquan Smith is hurt. He's going to miss a few games. Kyle Van Noy's been out. Hopefully they do get him back, but, I mean, that's only part of a solution. That's not the whole solution. And then Marlon Humphrey's also going to be out. Jair Alexander was rushed back in, and he hasn't played since. So right now with the Baltimore Ravens, I think they need to take a good look at themselves in the mirror. Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, the GM. And then some of these players need to take a good look at themselves in the mirror too. Because they're just not playing to their ability. Roquan Smith, yes, he's not playing as well as he should. Daniel Falele is not a starting caliber guard. And I'm going to say that again. He's just not. He's not. And then the whole thing is Lamar's trying everything he can to help lift this team, but there's only so much that he can do. And now he's hurt. He's going to miss the next 2 to 3 games because of a hamstring injury. And now you got Ravens fans that are saying that he's faking it. He's not faking it. He's not. That's not the kind of person that he is. And that's not the kind of player that he is. He was seriously hurt. That hamstring was hurt. And it's probably been hurt since the beginning of the year. Because he just doesn't look as fast as we have seen him be. So I think he really is hurt. I don't think it. I know he's really hurt. And he's going to miss the next few games. And anybody that thinks that he's just faking it, I'm sorry. You're just trying to be a hater. I'm going to say it. You're just trying to be a hater because he's obviously hurt. You could see him limping after the game. Okay? Alright. Many ran over. But right now for the Baltimore Ravens, if they want to get to the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, they have to change up some things. And maybe this is the wake-up call that they needed. Because we've seen teams get the wake-up call and then something hits and they're able to do what they can do. I don't know. You know what? That's just the thing right now. This is a critical decision time for the Baltimore Ravens. They can either be stagnant and hope that things will work out like it did last year, or they can take action, get ahead of this, and maybe set themselves up for success. Maybe turn it around this year. If not, then get back to a position where they can be contenders in 2026. But right now, they have decisions to make. And I think the biggest one is, do they want to keep Harbaugh? So, that's got to be the number one decision. And if I'm Eric DeCosta, if I'm Steve Bisciotti, I don't want to keep Harbaugh around. Because it just seems like the game has passed him by. And I just don't know if he's the right guy to lead this team anymore. I think a new head coach might be exactly what this team needs. And again, that's not to say that Harbaugh was always bad. He wasn't, okay? He was a great head coach. Key word is was. He's just not that guy anymore. And that's what happens, okay? It happens to the best head coaches. I mean, it just does. Yeah, if it can happen to Bill Belichick and Tom Landry, it can happen to anybody. Now, for the Baltimore Orioles, it's about as clear as this. They didn't make the right moves. And I mentioned this before. You get guys like Tomoyuki Sagano. You bring back a Kyle Gibson who was let go. I don't even think he lasted a month on the Baltimore Orioles. They brought in 41-year-old Charlie Morton. And while Morton was able to improve, I will say that, he improved after that horrible start. They just weren't the right moves to make. And then you have a guy in Grayson Rodriguez who didn't play at all this year, and I wouldn't expect him back at all in ever. Okay? This is one where I will believe it when I see it with Grayson Rodriguez. You need to just count him out of the roster until he's back on there. And you knew Branch was going to be out. And you knew Tyler Wells was going to be out. So, what were they thinking bringing in those guys when you still have a roster that can compete for a World Series? And then the hitting coaches that they brought in just weren't the right guys. I mean, it's kind of funny how Seattle was able to turn things around after those guys were gone when while those guys were there, they couldn't hit at all. Kind of funny how that works out. So definitely there's an overhaul that needs to be done, and not just with them, but with the training staff as well. And when we talk about the manager, and the Orioles figured this out early on, that it was time to move on from Brandon Hyde. And they made the move, I think, at the right time. When they were in the middle of that losing streak that they had, and they decided it was time to let go of Brandon Hyde, it was the right move to make. And ultimately, it was that stretch that cost them a playoff spot. Because without that stretch, they probably would have been in it for the final month of the season. They probably would have been in it for at least the wild card spot. Okay? Because there was a point where they went 2-12. If that doesn't happen, who knows what happens in September? You know, it's one bad run that kills a season. Look at the Mets. Look what happened with them. So right now with the Baltimore Orioles, they need to find a new manager. I don't think it's going to be Tony. And the reason I say that is because of his tone and Mike Elias' tone at the end of the year press conferences. Tony has no idea. And Mike is making it sound like he knows exactly what he wants. And while he will give Tony a chance to prove his case, I don't think it's going to be with Tony as the manager, but I think he does want Tony to stick around because the players do like him, and at the end of the day, I mean, he is a pretty good third base coach. So I think they do want him back as a coach, but not necessarily as the manager. That's what it sounded like to me. If anybody has different thoughts on that, let me know. So what should they look for? Should they look for another young guy, or should they look for, a young up-and-coming guy to take over, or should they look for a veteran that's been here before? Personally, I think they should look for a veteran that's been here before, because you have a bunch of young guys on this team. You know, Gunnar Henderson. You have Jordan Westberg, Jackson Holliday. Just called up Samuel Basayo and Dylan Beavers. Colton Cowser. All these guys are young, and they know how to get there. They know how to get to the playoffs. What they don't know is how they get further than that. Because they still have not won a playoff game since 2014. That was the last time the Orioles have won a playoff game. We know about the streak. Okay, they have the longest losing streak in the playoffs. Because they got swept by the Royals. Then they lose to the Blue Jays in 2016. Don't make the playoffs again until 2023. Get swept by the Rangers in 3 games. And then got swept by the Royals in 2 games. So they're up to 10 straight losses in the playoffs. That's not good. That's not good. That has to stop. That's got to stop the next time they go to the playoffs. They got to win at least a playoff game the next time they go. But when's that going to be? Will that be in 2026? Well, that's really going to all depend on who is brought in as manager, the changes they make with the coaching staff, and then the GM. I didn't even talk about that. Mike Elias was moved up to team president. And personally, I think that might have been a good decision. I know a lot of us wanted him out completely, but him now being the team president changes his role with the team and what he should be doing. And now you bring in a new guy as GM. A guy that can make all those off-season decisions that I think he had trouble making. Now, the Corbin Burns trade, that was a good one. Okay? I will admit that. Brandon Ron O'Hearn, that was good. But there were other decisions that he made that wasn't great. He was a good drafter. I will say that. He did good with the drafts. I mean, because you brought in Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg was one heck of a pick, and Jackson Holliday is the first overall pick. I mean, look at the rest of that draft class. Holliday's the one that got to the MLB first as a 20-year-old. And yeah, he's had his struggles, but again, he's 20 years old. He's going to have struggles. And he's learning. He's getting better. That's the best part about it. He is getting better. I just think with the Orioles, it's all about making the right decisions and finally finishing this team. It's still not finished. So with the pitching staff right now, okay, so Tyler Wells and Kyle Bradish are back. Wells, I know they're looking at him as a starter, but I would really like to see him as a reliever to start 2026. And then if you need him as a starter in case of injuries or because of injuries, you can put him in there until guys are healthy again. Because injuries are just going to happen. What's going to happen with Zach Eflin, I have no idea. I really don't. But he's a good pitcher. It just has problems staying on the field. But when he's on the field, he's a really good pitcher. He's not an ace, but he's a guy you want on your pitching staff. Dean Kramer, when he is not the guy, he's good. Okay? Does he have his days where he just doesn't have his stuff? Yeah. But I'd have him as a 5. There's nothing wrong with that. Trevor Rogers is coming off just one heck of a season. And he missed a good part of it. Didn't come until the summer, and he was just lights out when he came back. Just an amazing season by him. And Kyle Bradish is back, and he shows us why he finished, I think it was 4th in the Cy Young voting in 2023. Reminds us all of that. So, they had pieces already. Now it's all about building around that. Mike Elias was talking about bringing in another guy. That tells me he wants to try to bring in another ace, or at least another guy that can complement Rogers and Bradish as 1, 2, and 3. And again, the Grayson Rodriguez thing, if he's healthy, that's great. Okay? Love to have him back. Maybe start him in the bullpen and see if you can get him back to being a starter. But don't count on him. Just don't. He has not stayed healthy for an entire season yet. He hasn't had a consistent full season yet. So, I wouldn't count on Rodriguez. And I know people are saying don't count on Bradish either, but look, I like Bradish. I like how they developed him. If he's healthy, that just makes his pitching staff better. Should you expect injuries? Absolutely. Definitely. In this day and age, just because of how volatile the starting pitching staff can be, definitely want to bring in at least 7 capable starters, 8, 9, maybe 10. That's just the way the MLB is now. You need to plan for that. And they've got to bring in at least a guy, at least atop the rotation. Got to bring in another mid-tier starter, maybe another guy that you know can start games, and then figure out the bullpen. Okay? Felix Bautista is going to miss most of next year. You need to find a closer that's not a Craig Kimbrell. Find somebody that is going to be solid for you, that you can count on to close games. Because it's not on this roster. It's not Cano. He is just not the same pitcher that he was in 2023. It's not Keegan Aiken. He's a setup man. He's not a closer. They just don't have that right now. They really don't. If anything, see if Rodriguez or Wells can be that for you. Maybe one of them could be the closer if push comes to shove. Or just see what's out there in the market. They got to figure it out. Now, on the hitting side, figure out what to do with Tyler O'Neill. I don't know what they want to do with him because that first season was a disappointment. But when he's healthy, he's good. Except he wasn't this year. So is that a sign of things to come? I really don't know what the Orioles should do with Tyler O'Neill, but one thing I do know is if you have an idea, if you have an out, figure it out. It's just something with Tyler O'Neill. I don't know what to expect from him in 2026. It's just one where I'm not entirely sure. Now, we talk about the Adley Rutschman thing. Okay? Samuel Basallo got an 8-year extension. So, you think, okay, he's now the starting catcher, Rutschman's going to be traded. Mike Elias and just turned that down. He said, Adley is the starting catcher. And I believe that. He's the veteran. He's the guy that can be a quality catcher. Basallo still has a little bit to go before he's at the level that you want to see a MLB starting catcher be. So I completely understand the reasoning for keeping Adley Rutschman, especially since we know what he did when he first got called up, especially in 2023 as well, and the first half of 2024. Really, I think Rutschman's problems are just coaching. I think if you get the right coaches in there, I think they can fix Rutschman and get him back to the form that he was in 2023. But will they? That's the big question. Now, really, the thing to look out for, I think, is Ryan Mountcastle. Because right now you have Mountcastle and Mayo at first base, and then Basayo can also play first base, Rutschman at catcher along with Basayo, and then Mountcastle, Mayo, Rutschman, and Basayo all can be the DH. Just seems like a little bit too much at this point. Especially since Mayo kind of is the Mountcastle replacement, so really the Orioles need to figure out what they're going to do with him. Because Mayo is considered the future. Mountcastle, there's just not a lot left with him on the contract status that he is now. I think he's a free agent after 2026. So figure out what you want to do there. Because it does seem like Ryan Mountcastle does need to change his scenery. Because we haven't seen him reach the heights that he had the year that he hit over 30 home runs. And part of that is because of the wall, but other part is just he's had trouble staying healthy and he's had trouble being consistent. It's just the case. So that's one to keep an eye on. Also, I would keep an eye on what they want to do in the outfield. Colton Cowser more than likely is going to be the starting center fielder. But you have, I believe it's Jermaine Jackson, who, when he came up and proved that he can play at the major league level, he really performed well under just not great circumstances, let's be honest. And of course, the whole Tyler O'Neill thing, maybe bring in another guy, and then figure out when you want to bring up Enrique Bradfield Jr., because more than likely, he's going to be brought up because I don't see another guy on this roster that can do the things that he can do. He can get on base, and when he gets on base, I mean, he can turn a single into a double because he can steal. He's that fast. And it's like, it is kind of like Jorge Mateo, but Mateo doesn't hit as well as Bradfield has done so far in the minors. And that's the big thing. Mateo just doesn't get on base enough to where it's warranted that speed. It's like he's only good when you put him in as a pinch runner, and that's not really what you want to do with something like that. So that is definitely something the Orioles need to figure out. When do they want to bring up a guy like Enrique Bradfield Jr.? But really with the Orioles, if they can make the right moves, bring in the right guys, I think they will be competing. But the question is going to be, will they do that? And when do we see a new manager and a new GM? Do they bring in the GM first? Because you kind of want to bring in the GM first, but we've seen teams go against that, bring in the coach first and then the GM. That's the big question. And will they make the right decisions? I mean, the hitting coach has got to be gone. The training staff, it needs to be overhauled because those injuries, I mean, it's just insane how that happened. And yes, some of them were out of their control. Like when a guy gets hit by a pitch, is that really anybody's fault except the pitcher that hits them? I doubt it. I mean, wouldn't you be really hurt if you get hit with like a 90-something mile-an-hour fastball right to the wrist or right to the ribs? Wouldn't you? But some of them were in their control. And I just don't think this training staff is the way to go for the Orioles. And right now, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And one other thing. No Orioles hitter had 20 home runs. None of them reached 20. So do they bring in a power back? Could they try to bring in a guy like a Pete Alonso or a Kyle Schwarber? And while that would definitely bring up more questions about where they're going to play, I think you take that with the power that those two can bring in. But we shall see. We shall see. We know the Orioles can make moves. Okay? There's a reason why the payroll increased the way it did from 2024 to 2025. But they have to use the money wisely this time. And it's not bringing in a 35-year-old Sagano or a 41-year-old Charlie Morton and bringing in Tyler O'Neill. It's making the right moves. Calculated, and that will fit this team nicely. Look at the best move they made in the offseason last year. It was Ramon Laureano, who played amazing for them. And yes, he was traded to the Padres, but he's playing even better with the Padres, and he was already playing good with the Orioles. Moves like that. Find the right move to make. Find a guy that is at the top of the rotation to complement both Rogers and Bradish. Find the hitter that can take this lineup to the next level. Find the coaches that can unlock the old Adley Rutschman. That's what the Orioles have to do. This is their mission. And let's see what happens. I mean, hey, something similar happened to the Padres. When they got Juan Soto, it was a big disappointment. And then, they got back. That's the big thing. They rebounded. Can the Orioles do the same? We're going to find out.